Welcome to the Paranormal Stakeout Radio TV show with Larry Lawson. As a former career law enforcement officer and law enforcement educator, Larry focuses on the use of tried and true law enforcement investigative techniques in conducting paranormal investigations. Despite his experience and training, Larry also keeps an open mind to discussions on topics that deal with evidence that are not quite as physical in nature. Paranormal Stakeout guests are professionals in the field of the paranormal and parapsychology, conducting the investigations and research needed to further the cause of paranormal study. Larry advocates an agenda of standardization of structure and training in the field of paranormal investigation and research for the purpose of one day being able to produce the evidence needed to convince a jury of the existence of the paranormal. Whether it is ghosts, UFOs, unsolved mysteries, hauntings or cryptids, no topic is beyond the investigative reach of Larry Lawson and the Paranormal Stakeout Radio TV show team. Now, here is the host of the Paranormal Stakeout Radio TV show, Larry Lawson.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Paranormal Stakeout. I'm your host, Larry Lawson, coming to you again from beautiful Vero Beach, Florida, the home of the Florida Bureau of Paranormal Investigation and Indian River Hauntings. And I like to call it the Southern Command Post of the X-Zone Radio and TV network. And I'd like to give a shout out to my good friend, producer, and star of the X-Zone, Rob McConnell. Thank you for having me on. Also want to give a shout out to my assistant, Shelly McGowan, who's doing some fantastic work helping me prep for all the shows. So I want to give you a shout out, Shelly. So got a great show tonight, folks. Really, I'm going to have a good friend of mine on, a gentleman that I've known for a while. We've talked many times. He's got some of the most interesting philosophies in the world of paranormal research. His name is Elliott Van Dusen. Elliott served the people of Canada for 15 years at the RCMP. He was a Mountie, specialized in criminal investigations, particularly major crimes, sex crimes, homicides, things like that. And now he's a paranormal researcher. He retired from the Mounties after 15 years as a corporal investigator. He's got a degree in from the Stanford parapsychology degree from Stanford Career Institute, a doctorate degree of parapsychology from American International University. And he's also the director of the Paranormal Phenomenon and Research and Investigation Organization, a very well-known and respected outfit in Canada. And tonight we're going to be talking about not only his philosophies, but something that's really, really interesting coming up that I want to share with everybody. So I'd like to welcome to the show my friend, Elliott Van Dusen.
Great to see you again, Larry.
Good seeing you, my friend. It's been a while, but it's just like guys. We don't see each other for a while. We just pick up like we just saw each other the day before. So it's good talking with you again. I know all about you, pretty much, but a lot of my guests don't. So why don't we start off by sharing with my audience out there who you are, how you got into this field, and a little bit of your background.
Yeah, for sure. It's been a while since I've been on Paranormal Stakeout. A lot of people ask me if I had an experience that got me into my interest into the paranormal, but it was actually unsolved mysteries, because I knew I wanted to be a police officer, and specifically knew I wanted to do homicide investigations. So unsolved mysteries was perfect. It had very interesting cold cases, and then every once in a while they tease you with a ghost story or a UFO story, which I also thought was really fascinating. And then fast forward to 1997, I discovered the television show The X-Files, but it had been on TV since 1993. But I thought it was really interesting that you had two law enforcement officers investigating claims of the supernatural. So I created my nonprofit organization, Paranormal Phenomena Research and Investigation. Started out by collecting local folklore stories, which then led into investigations and trying to take as many courses as I possibly could. I've studied from all over the world, Nova Scotia Community College, University of Edinburgh, University of Ottawa, Stratford Career Institute. Wherever I could get my hands on courses, I did it. And I've been doing it now for 28 years. Like you said in my introduction, I served Canada for 15 years. So I take both that law enforcement experience and paranormal investigator experience and combine it with my role here at PPRI.
Excellent. Now, here's a question for you. I get this quite a bit being a retired cop myself. Does your experience, your background in law enforcement, does that help? Does that make it easier? Does it help you with your investigations into the paranormal?
Yeah, it certainly has. Obviously, the interviewing training that we receive as police officers helps. Um, I took a special course on how to interview children. So if we do have a case involving children, there's a certain way to interview them without leading them on, unlike adults
Mm-hmm.
where, you can get the pure version statement from them first and then ask direct questions. A little bit different with children. You don't want to taint their version. Even the way that we handle evidence now in paranormal investigations, I treat it almost like an exhibit. So we have somebody that collects all the evidence at the end of the investigation, uploads it to our shared drive. We try and keep continuity of who has what device. And what else have I done? Certainly safety aspects. I never send any of my investigators alone to a site, even if the person has no sign of mental health issues or anything like that. I always send at least 2 investigators just for safety reasons. And we actually just implemented a new policy that when we finish our investigation, when everyone travels home, they have to text or email or call the lead investigator and let them know that they arrived home safely. So taking a lot of my law enforcement experience over to the paranormal.
Does it help with your examination of the evidence? And have you been able to work with your teammates that maybe don't have your background to understand what your concept is with that?
Yeah, we're a pretty cohesive team. We're a small team. I think we're at 16 people now. Each of us has our own specialty. I have 2 professional photographers. I have a psychiatrist, 2 parapsychologists. My wife doesn't have any background in the paranormal, but she's a chartered human resource professional, so she's very good with people. She's skeptical, so she makes us work for our answers. I have a medium. I have a retired Air Force member that leads our UAP or UFO unit. He was actually an air traffic controller with the Royal Canadian Air Force and had some UFO experiences himself. And I also have a retired Royal Canadian Navy member. So we have a very diverse background. Everyone, is respectful and listens and is willing to follow policy. So we haven't had any issues there. We're all very open-minded and all get along. So we have a very good team.
It also sounds like your folks, you included, are very educated, well educated, and not necessarily going to college to get the degree, but also educated in the field. Do you find that a lot of other teams, people you may interact with, they maybe watched a couple of TV shows and jumped out there, or do you find that most of them have taken the time that you and your folks have to educate themselves?
I have come across a few good teams in my day, people that I would have on my team for sure. But I do follow a lot of people that are involved in investigating from the amateur side. And I do see 2 kind of sides. I've always kind of sided myself with what I call the academic side of the paranormal. I sit on the Rhine research team of about 50 people that meet every Wednesday. I've taken lots of courses from Rhine Education Center and kind of associate with the academics, whereas other people are, more about the paracons and the Hollywood TV type investigators. And I have seen some ethical and methodological flaws in their investigations.
Yeah. I look at 2 types, 2 types of investigators, the researcher versus the thrill seeker, so to speak. That's a term that I like to use. What's the ratio of those of us out there between what we call the folks that just want to hear the bump in the night as compared to really wanting to find out what the answer is to this mystery?
I think that there's a lot of people out there that do it because they find it interesting. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are doing it that have good intentions, but they might just not be necessarily following the best practices. And then there are some that are just out there for YouTube fame and clicks and likes, for sure. I've come across that as well.
There's a
I
lot
have
of that.
There is a lot of that. I have noticed, though, on the academic side, they're trying to create the citizen scientist type program where, academics will try and either embed themselves in some groups or offer workshops, because academics do realize that there are a ton of people interested in the paranormal, ton of people out there doing research and investigations and capturing interesting stuff, whether it's electronic voice phenomena or photos.
Mm.
And so they're trying to teach them kind of best practices and best methods to collect this information, because it is valuable overall, especially if they share it. That's another thing I've noticed about amateurs. A lot of times they don't share information, or they almost act like a certain particular site is theirs, and they get really offended when another group or organization comes in.
Don't you think that might come from maybe lack of confidence that they actually know what they're doing, and therefore they don't want perhaps somebody to come into their area and maybe prove them wrong? Is that possible?
I mean, I think it's possible. I also think there's a lot of like jealousy in the paranormal field. I see a lot of like slandering happening online between different people and different groups, and I certainly don't get involved in that kind of stuff. And sometimes it makes the newspapers. For example, I just read an article that the Society for Psychical Research shared,
Mhm.
talking about Jason Hawes trying to use GoFundMe
Yes.
money to purchase the Conjuring house, and there's quite a bit of ethical issues with that. So, I read it and I stay on top of it, but I don't chime in.
Well, what's your thoughts on that? For those of that aren't familiar with, Jason Hawes is a member of the original Ghost Hunters. He's involved or friends with Andrea Perone, and she wants him, from what I saw on the YouTube, to purchase the Conjuring house so it doesn't fall into improper hands or somebody that won't take care of the property. And he's done the GoFundMe account in order to raise the money. What are your thoughts on that? Do you have an opinion?
Yeah, like initially when I saw it, it sounded like good intentions. The Conjuring house has been for sale multiple times. I saw it back in 2018, I believe, when an elderly lady still owned it. It was after the Conjuring movies came out. There were no trespassing signs everywhere. And
Mhm.
she eventually sold it just because of all the trespassers. And then after that, it's
Mm.
kind of switched hands a few times and become kind of a paranormal marketplace where they charge
Mm.
ghost hunters astronomical amounts to go spend the night there.
And that's a whole different subject, is this paranormal selling of paranormal spots to folks that want to get that thrill. How often do you see, first question is, how often do you see true researchers go to places like that?
You don't, it's usually your YouTube people. And of course, if you want to live stream at the location, it's astronomical amounts. I know at one point, I believe
Mm.
the Conjuring House was charging almost $1,200 US if you wanted to live stream from there. Um,
Wow, just the live stream.
yeah, and we've seen places like Conjuring House. Ed and Lorraine Warren's house was just purchased by comedian Matt Rife. We've seen Lizzie Borden house purchased. So all these, classical paranormal type sites are being purchased for monetary purposes.
I want to kind of talk a little bit more about that and get your thoughts on that, because I have my feelings too that I'll share with you. But we're in about 45 seconds. We're going to take our break, but I'd like you to take a couple seconds. You mentioned the Rhine Institute. People out there might be wondering what that is. Can you just take about 30 seconds to kind of
Yeah,
share that?
so Rhine is a great spot to take courses. Rhine Education Center. It was part of Duke University way back in the day with J.B. Rhine. They had their own parapsychological laboratory, and then when the funding dried up, they purchased the building right across from Duke University. It's a nonprofit organization called the Rhine Research Center, and they do excellent courses.
Okay, so folks, check that out. Education is everything. But we've got to take our first break, so stay with us. Elliott Van Dusen's got a lot to share with us, so don't go away. See you in a few minutes. And we're back for part two of tonight's show. You really got me thinking after that last bit, because this has been a subject that's been kind of bothering me a little bit, and that has to do with the purchasing of buildings strictly to put it out there as haunted, maybe take advantage of the situation. The Perone House is a great example of that. Do you think, in your opinion, that this for-profit paranormal ghost hunting is hurting the field or helping? And before you answer that, I believe that the TV shows, as much as most of us don't really like them anymore, I do think it brought it to the forefront of our society that made it more normal, for lack of a better term. Therefore, more people got involved and interested and became serious researchers. But have we passed that point? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I will give the TV shows that credit for sure. Their exposure has certainly gotten people interested in the paranormal. I have people that attend my events that watch, Ghost Adventures and all those
Yeah.
classic shows. Um, Certainly, it also makes people aware of the technology, because when I'm talking to people and doing an educational component, they know what a REM pod is, they know what the K2 meter is, and all that is, thanks to television. So it certainly has its positives. Some of the negatives is that it is what I call para entertainment. A lot of it is, hyped up. The fact that they investigate in the dark, for example, the Society for Psychical Research, which is our first ever kind of ghost hunting group that was started back in 1882. They've studied thousands and thousands of cases, and they've been able to determine that ghosts can appear at any point in time,
Anytime.
whether the lights are on, lights are off, indoors, outdoors, snowstorm, sunny Florida weather, it doesn't matter. So on TV, you'll see them shoot in night vision quite a bit, just for the dramatics. I also know that they like tools like the K2 meter because it's got lights on it and it looks good on TV. So there are, certain things that they do just for entertainment purposes, which I do think is a negative thing for serious people like yourself and I.
So do we champion it, or do we champion getting them off the air? If What do you think?
It's, you know, it it's really interesting. I know a lot of people that I've spoke to, they kind of know that it's for entertainment.
Mhm.
When I do our public ghost hunts, I do incorporate an educational component to it, and I always
Yes.
ask people, how many people think what you see on TV is real, and either no one raises their hand because they don't want to look stupid, I guess, or
Right,
uh,
right.
most people are aware that it's a little bit different. So we even started having people towards the end of our public ghost hunt start to listen to some of the audio that's been recorded that evening, just to show them, what our
Yep.
videographer and photographer and audio engineer would have to go through later on when they're sifting through all that data, just to kind of give them a taste of, what it's really like to be a paranormal investigator.
And that's been my experience also. I've talked to folks, I beginning of a tours, my historical tours. Do you understand that TV shows are for entertainment? Now, there's some decent people out there. We got to keep that in mind. There's some folks that have been on TV. They're decent, honest, sincere folks. I don't think there's anything doubt about that. But TV is for entertainment. Um, but it also has given rise to this for-profit situation, the Conjuring House. I won't even mention some of the other places, but a lot of things, the mental health asylums, prisons, things like that.
Yeah.
Can 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 those the exploitation of that building, we'll just use that term, be helpful to them in their upkeep though? Is that a positive?
I think some of them could be for sure if they used it for that. Like you said, prisons are another one. There's one around here called the Dorchester Jail, which is
Mm.
kind of an Airbnb. You can rent it out. Your room is actually an old cell.
Yeah.
I filmed there for the television show Repossessed. They called me in to do an expert opinion on the show, and very cool spot, and it's reasonably priced. But again, I guess it depends on what you're into. So my organization, we don't go out and proactively investigate. So I don't call up our local museum and ask to go there and investigate.
That's-
We're strictly a reactive organization. So usually we get about 7 to 12 cases per year. Somebody reaches out looking for assistance. We don't charge them for anything. That's why I do all my fundraising throughout the year, so that it doesn't cost the client any money. And there's I don't know. I don't think I would pay, $1,000 to have my team go and spend the night at a Lizzie Borden house or a Conjuring house or anything like that. I just don't think it's worth it. Research wise, investigation wise, it's a lot of money to spend when you're a nonprofit organization and everyone's doing this on a volunteer basis.
Exactly. And part of what we do is also to fund those types of things too. I guess the reason why I've gone down this line of questioning is I've come to find that going to those places really tend to be, I don't want to say a waste of time, but I get more out of a small little spot that somebody has had a problem than we go in and take a look at. I've had more activity there. I've uncovered more evidence in spots like that than I have like the Stanley Hotel, just to use an example, which leads to this question. Places that are investigated a lot, can they be, for lack of a better term, fished out?
I think certain cases are, like for the Conjuring home, there's been homeowners that have lived there that have gone on the record saying that they haven't experienced anything paranormal. Perhaps when the parent family did reside there, they were experiencing phenomena, but it doesn't seem to be, the case anymore. I always laugh as well at what tools people are using. And I find when they start using like the applications on the phone or a lot of the gear that you can buy online that's marketed to ghost hunters, they're always getting results. But when we go in and we use the gear properly, such as, a high quality electromagnetic field radiation detector, a FLIR thermal camera, high quality recorders with no software and no applications, you usually come out of those places with a lot less. We have caught stuff, but it's not as frequently as when people are using all the gimmicks. And when you actually read the manual and go through the descriptors on it, a lot of it will say entertainment purposes only.
Especially the phone apps, which is a whole different subject. Do you also find that many people using the equipment can't really even describe the theory behind its use or how they're getting the evidence? They don't understand it. Do you find that at all?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, I was just in Thunder Bay at a paranormal convention, and they did a public ghost hunt. One of the first things I noticed was the lights were off. So I had asked, the lead organizers if they investigate with the lights out, and they said sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And then I was in the room trying to charge my laptop because it had died. I was using it all day at the conference, and I couldn't get it to charge. And I tried every jack, and I'm like, oh, this is weird. So I went out and talked to one of the museum members, and they told me that they had turned the breaker off. And I said, oh, okay. And then they're like, I can turn it back on, but it won't be, it's a ghost hunt. It won't be spooky or whatever. So there's a lot of people that do, these ghost hunts, and they spoof them up like that, like keeping the lights out and stuff. So I gave a very educational lecture. I told, every group that would come visit me that there's no reason to investigate in the dark, and I explained what the equipment is. And I was actually very impressed. All the 4 groups that cycle through me, I asked them if they know who uses an EMF reader in real life besides ghost hunters. And each group, there was somebody in there that knew that it was a tool used by electricians to look for unshielded and ungrounded wires. And I was very impressed by that.
Well, and that shows people taking time to read and study. So that's excellent, because that's the one thing that I've had in my experience. People really, they know the lights come on, and that supposedly means there's activity, but they can't tell me why the lights go on. So that's very interesting. One thing on kind of another side of it, dowsing rods. People have been using those for generations to find water, and I've actually had not only well diggers on my tour say, oh yeah, we use them still today to find water. I've actually had electricians say, yep, I use dowsing wire rods to find wires in walls. So that's the other side of it also, I guess, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So
I just I did a presentation actually at Thunder Bay, and it was called Law Enforcement and the Paranormal. And ironically, I talked a little bit about dowsing, like you said. It's also known as
Mhm.
witching. But
Mhm.
diamond mine companies and mineral companies use them. Oil companies use them as well. And there was actually a case in the state of Georgia where dowsing was actually admitted as evidence
Yep.
by a
Yeah.
detective that testified to finding bones from a missing girl, and he explained how it works, and actually did a demonstration in court, and the evidence was actually accepted. And I played that clip there at the Thunder Bay Paranormal Convention. I told him, I said, this is very important because the courts normally don't accept evidence from the paranormal, but in this case, dowsing was actually accepted as evidence.
Because you can actually describe a scientifically proven method to it, and that's what we've got to get to. What we have to get our evidence into the scientific world. Now, just before we get our next break, you've got a really neat event coming up. I want to just touch on that. We'll go into more detail on the other side of it. But tell us what you've got coming up this weekend.
Yeah, next week is our third annual Halifax Paranormal Symposium. It is our biggest one yet so far. We have 120 out of 200 seats sold, which is phenomenal. This year we introduced a Alexander Keith's Brewery ghost hunt. We're only the second organization to be granted permission to investigate at Alexander Keith's. That was sold out, and we're also doing a psychic medium Laura Warren live in Halifax workshop as well, and that sold out as well. So next
Mhm.
year for our fourth conference, I'm actually looking at expanding to 2 full days.
Excellent, excellent. You mentioned mediums. You were a cop for a long time. Did you use them when you were on the job?
No, there was one cold case that I reviewed when I was up in Yellowknife, and I did see a medium tip come in there. It was completely inaccurate. It was talking about a missing girl that was from the Northwest Territories, and that they saw sand dunes and cactuses. The medium was from southern U.S., and of course, in Canada subarctic, we don't have cactuses and sand dunes. You know, it was a complete opposite description.
So, and how do you feel? What is your opinion of mediums as a whole?
You know what? I have a very good medium on my team, Jody Russell. She
Mhm.
has shown me time and time again that she has the legitimate ability. She has given us information that we were actually able to corroborate multiple times, and just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah. Now, I when I was on the job, I would have mediums call on homicide investigations, giving information. Nothing ever panned out. Excuse me. I had a very negative view of it until I met a couple that actually a couple of different ones that actually changed my mind on it. So I was wondering about that. And you're going to have this person at your event. Uh, Also, they're going to be doing. I know they're doing private sessions, but are they going to talk to the crowd at all about what they do?
Yeah, so in the workshop, I've asked Laura Warren to do a like a group reading for 2 hours. So there's it was limited to 40 people. She probably won't
Mhm.
get to read all 40 people, but she'll get to do
Okay.
quite a few. People always find her really interesting. I had her as a guest speaker last year talking about her mediumship abilities, and she was
Okay.
one of the favorite guest speakers. So.
Excellent. Well, we're going to talk more about your symposium as a whole right on the other side after this break. So, folks, stay with us. Elliott Van Dusen, my guest tonight. See you in just a couple. You know, I'm sitting here during the break, Elliott, thinking, there are just so many things I want to talk with you about. There's such a huge variety of things I would like to go over with you, and we've just got this short little hour, so we're going to have to do this again in the
Oh,
future.
absolutely.
Now, I want to get into a couple of those other different topics, but really I want to spend a little bit of time now getting really into the symposium. You've told us a little bit about who you're going to have there, but I'd like to hear more about the setup. I'd like to to know what it is you're hoping to accomplish by giving this presentation. What are you looking to do to help the field?
Yeah, so there isn't many conferences of this type in Canada. A lot of these happen down in the United States. There used to be some Bigfoot conferences out in British Columbia. We do have the Shag Harbor UFO Expo here in Nova Scotia that's going into like 13th, 14th year. They just started going to a hotel about 4 years ago, so they just kind of upped their game, so to speak. But they only deal with UFOs and extraterrestrials, whereas I try and bring in different topics every year from all the fields. So not just parapsychology, ufology, but any anomalous phenomena. So this year we have a whole range of topics. Dr. Yana Greenberg's coming from San Diego to talk to us about ancient astronauts or aliens. We have Tony Rathman coming to talk to us about electronic voice phenomena and talk about his ITC research with the program and device that he's created called Staticom, where he believes you can communicate with the dead in real time. He did do a private session with Dr. Yana and I once, and we were asking questions about the afterlife, and we weren't getting any responses that we were hoping for. But I just threw it out there. I said to Yana, why don't you start speaking Russian and see what happens? And when she started speaking Russian, the voices on the other end started to make fun of the Russian language and Russians. And Dr. Yana is very proud of her Russian heritage, so she was kind of offended, but it was kind of funny. And it was interesting that the conversation became relevant. And he'll be doing a live demonstration after lunch where we're going to pick different people from the audience. They'll have 5 minutes to come up on stage and ask whatever questions they want. I have seen other videos that they produced where deceased loved ones have come forward and people have gotten meaningful responses. So I'll be curious. It'll be like a live experimentation at the symposium this year. Then after lunch, we'll have Natalie Jones, from the CEO of Paraflix, coming to talk to us about energy, work, and awakening the higher self. We'll have Brian Baker, who's a journalist, coming from Toronto to talk to us about cryptozoology and some of the very unique stories that he's covered over the years. And last but not least, we'll have one of our own investigators, Pierre Filitro, who has an interest in Ouija boards, to talk to us about the history of the Ouija board, some of the fallacies about them. And I think that'll be very interesting as well.
And you're expecting a big crowd, I guess, right?
Yeah, so this is our best year so far. I think our first year when we launched, we had 103 attendees. Last year it dropped off a little bit. We had 99. And this year, right now, we're sitting at 120. So it's our biggest year yet. Plus, we added the 2 workshops, which sold out. So, we're looking forward to a big year this year.
And folks still get tickets to the event?
Yes, they can. They are available on Eventbrite. That's the easiest way to find us. But you can also go to our website as well, ppri.net/tickets, and that'll bring you directly to the Eventbrite website. Like I said, there's about 80 seats left, I think, for general admission, and our other workshops are sold out already. So,
sounds like you've gotten a huge bit of interest this year. That's excellent.
Yeah, it's great.
What do you want to accomplish? What is the reason you're doing this?
Yeah, so like I said, we wanted to bring back a conference like this to Canada. Because we don't really have anything. We've actually become the biggest paranormal conference or convention symposium in Atlantic Canada. No one else does anything quite like this. So that's something to be very proud of. But one thing that I've really taken pride in this is I always get people comment about when they're in the crowd and they look around and they see all the other people that have the same interests as them. They don't feel like an outcast. They feel very included, and they feel like they're part of a community that they didn't really know existed. So I love hearing about that. Certainly there is still some stigma out there about the paranormal and different topics like UFOs and extraterrestrials and all that stuff. But it has gotten better since even when I started investigating 28 years ago. But of course, there is still a bit of a stigma out there. So I think people feel safe coming to our symposium and being able to just be who they are and open a discussion and ask questions and not feel ridiculed or ashamed.
Oh, and I've seen conferences like that where people they've had actually workshops where people would present evidence they had themselves, and people would sit upon high on the dais, looking at their evidence and determining whether or not it was real. And actually, sometimes was downright insulting to people. Folks just want to know. But are you wanting to educate folks in the field? Are you wanting to open it up and get people to open their minds a little bit more and become part of it? What do you think is your priority here?
Yeah, certainly all of that really. Even skeptics. It's funny. You can talk to somebody and they might not believe in ghosts, but the minute you start telling them about one of the investigations you were on where you caught something, what happens? They go quiet and they listen very intently.
Mhm.
Even just the story, they might not necessarily believe it by the time you're done telling the story, but even the story itself captures their attention. Even a skeptic can't help but listen to a good story. So I think we get, a mix of people, and we've kind of designed it so that it's a mix of education, but also
Okay,
some entertainment as well.
okay.
Because you can't be too highly academic. I find you start to lose people, and even academics are starting to realize that now. Instead of talking, boring peer-reviewed journal language, they're trying to just speak in layman's terms now, and I think people really appreciate that.
I was at a conference recently, I won't say where, a good conference, and there was a gentleman presenting a topic, and he was brilliant. He really was. But after a while, nobody knew what he was talking about because he got so deep into the weeds. So I understand exactly what you're talking about, and it's difficult. You've got to make it at levels for everybody to jump in. So I totally get it. You said something a little interesting a minute ago, though. You talked about taking away the stigma. When you first came on the job, and I don't know if you had any experiences while you were on duty ever, but I know when I came on, you may talk to your zone partner about it or the guy you're working with, guy or gal you're working with, but you didn't talk about it any time after that because you'd be afraid the boss would send you for a psych eval. It's different now. It's different now. But how did you experience that at all back in your early days?
Oh God, yeah. I'm pretty much like my fictional hero Fox Mulder, where his FBI colleagues were always making fun of him about little green men. I'd have people tape proton packs to my locker. I had people fill out requisition quits and acquisition forms and put it on the staff sergeant's desk, asking for a proton pack for me. Different things like that. It was funny. I actually got called in the staff sergeant's office once about being involved in this, and I was kind of getting upset at this point. And I said, "You guys do realize, like, our organization, the RCMP, used to actually investigate UFOs, right?" And they said, "Well, what do you mean?" I'm like, "Well," I said, "I
I
have all the
didn't know that.
files at home." From the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the RCMP used to investigate UFOs. There was a very strict
Oh,
process. You had to notify Department of National Defense anytime a UFO sighting came in. I've got hundreds and hundreds of RCMP documents from when we used to investigate UFOs. They had no idea. So I always found that ironic. And then when I wrote my two books, uh, dealing just with law enforcement and the paranormal, it was interesting because I had a lot of people in the parapsychological community contact me and say, "How did you get these people to talk to you? We could never get cops to tell us their paranormal experiences." I said, "To be honest with you," I said, "I don't know. I don't know if it's just they trusted me because I was a member of the law enforcement community and a paranormal investigator. But I said, I just started by reaching out to people I knew, asking if they had any experiences. And next thing I know, I had sheriffs, military personnel, RCMP
mhm.
officers, city police officers telling me their ghost stories, UFO stories, near death experiences, everything." And I managed to collect over 100 stories that might not have been told if I hadn't have reached out, collected them, and published them.
Do you think, and I'm going to start calling you Fox Van Dusen, by the way, it's going to fit you, but do you think going back to what I mentioned earlier about the TV shows, bringing this more into the forefront, do you think that helped folks in our community maybe feel more comfortable?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's kind of normalized it. I mean, everyone has a good ghost story that they've heard or that's been passed down to them.
Yeah.
Everyone's heard about local superstitions and local folklore. So it's certainly something that's very prevalent. I think humans just in general like a good mystery.
And I think that's a big part of this also, right? And we're also still questioning what actually happens after we're gone. I mean, I know from the experiences you and I have talked about that we've both had, there's something that's going on, but just
Yeah,
what
I
is
mean,
it?
one of my favorite quotes was from Dr. Sam Perina, who's a medical doctor at New York University. And he said that he can empirically say that he knows human consciousness can survive our physical body after death for at least 2 hours. And he knows that from the studies that he's done, where he's brought back people that have died and they resuscitate them. And they ask them a series of questions and they're able to corroborate some of the information that they've given. So he knows that somebody has died and their body, their spirit, has walked around that hospital and seen things that they wouldn't have been able to see because they were bedridden or they weren't able to make it up to the roof, and they knew exactly which lights were burnt out on the roof. So he said he can empirically say he knows human consciousness can stay outside the physical body for at least 2 hours after death. Now, what happens after that, he said, would only be speculation for him, but that's where you and I come in and we do our investigations, and sometimes, you collect some pretty amazing evidence.
I actually had a doctor. I was on a tour. It was one of those tours where his wife brought him, and I didn't think he wanted to be there just by his demeanor. And then after the tour, he pulled me aside to say he was an ER doc during his residency and actually experienced something where a guy should have died but didn't, but then came back later and asked who this other doctor was. And how could you know that doctor? You were completely out of it. Well, I was sitting up in the corner of the room looking down, and this very, very educated man said, "There's no way the guy could have known that." So the just interesting stories like that, you can't say that it just doesn't exist. The question is, what exactly is it? So,
Exactly.
um, what do you think the phenomenon is? You got an opinion? Do you have a philosophy that you can share with us what you think this whole thing is?
I think there's different types. Like, certainly, I think that you can die and your human consciousness and personality survives outside of the body. And for whatever reason, you've either chosen to stay behind on our physical realm, or perhaps you didn't know that you were dead. We hear that from mediums sometimes, that
Yeah,
they're talking
yeah,
to a spirit, and for some reason, they don't know that they're dead. Some are residual hauntings. Obviously, those are
yep.
like your video recordings where it's not an intelligent haunting. It's just energy trapped in the environment that replays over and over again based on certain environmental circumstances. And then we know that there's some things in our natural world that can cause us to experience a haunting. Carbon monoxide is one. There was a case in 2002 where a lady was showering. Female apparition appeared in the shower. She called her local paranormal team. They were smart. They did an environmental assessment, found out she had a hot water tank that was improperly installed. So she was actually suffering from carbon monoxide poisoning. And then we know from great Canadians like
Well,
Dr. Michael Persinger that EMF
I got to.
radiation can cause.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that too. But we've got to take our last break. Heck, to cut you off, Elliot, right when we're getting into something. But folks, stay with us. We'll be back right after this break. Man, this hour has gone fast.
Always
Uh,
does.
always does. Listen, we were talking about something really interesting when I had to cut you off. You were talking about um, people that have experiences where there's high levels of EMF, which we all
Yes.
know can mess with your head. The lady in the shower with the carbon monoxide, all good points and easy to say that, that's what's causing it. But let me toss this out to you. Is it possible that while, yes, both the EMF and the carbon monoxide create illusions in the head, is it possible that also creates an opening for whatever it is to contact us? That maybe it isn't so much a hallucination as it is just an opening that's been made because of that phenomenon. Does that make sense?
EMF can, for sure. Certainly, one other thing that Dr. Michael Persinger found is that it started to help people open up their psychic abilities. And once he passed away, the patent ended up being shifted around, and you can actually buy um, basically a home version of what he called the God helmet. So in his laboratory, he used a snowmobile helmet that he modified with electrodes, found research participants and exposed them to high amounts of EMF. And that's where he found that it opened up psychic abilities. And then at a certain level, caused them to experience haunting characteristics, such as feeling watched, seeing apparitions, hearing auditory hallucinations. And if you were religious, some people actually reported seeing the Virgin Mary show up in his laboratory. But you can buy the Shira helmet, it's called, online, and you can use it to try and open up your psychic abilities. We do have one. We haven't played around with it yet. I always threaten to put it on my colleague Daryl Walsh and watch him crank it up and watch him pee his pants. But we haven't tried it out yet.
But once again, getting back to the phenomenon itself, it's really easy for us to say it's your mind causing this hallucination. But I think you'll agree that the ability of our own mind has not been fully explored. We do not know all of its capabilities. So is it possible, even with the EMF or the carbon monoxide that you were talking about, isn't it possible that it could be opening up a conduit to the other side? Drugs. Let's talk about that a little bit. The MK Ultra experiments and what they did, and a lot of that led to the remote viewing. That was all part of that project. Is it possible that there are ways to modify our brain that it's not that show that it's not an illusion, it's not a hallucination. I can't talk, but actually a conduit to the other side? Is that possible, Elliott?
Well, there has been lots of research done on altered states of consciousness, and that is so vague. You and I could have a cup of coffee right now, and we've altered our state of consciousness. For us, it makes us alert. Other people, they might have a negative reaction to caffeine. But there's lots of different things you can do to kind of alter your state of consciousness. And of course, the more calmer environment you're in and the lower your anxiety and your thought process and almost meditation level, they have found that it does again open up your sight, your psychic sight. That's why things like the Gansfeld, they use earphones, and they play either white or pink noise. They'll put half ping pong balls over your eyes. They'll have a nice red light. And they found people score above chance for telepathy in the Gansfeld when they're in a more relaxed state like that. So certainly possible. Drugs as well. Like you said, there's shamans and different First Nation tribes as well that take certain substances in order to do meditation or, open up their psychic abilities as well. So there's so much in this field. It's really unreal.
What's it going to take then for an organization, your organization or some other organization? Obviously, there's got to be some sort of financial backing, but to really start studying this. I mean, you cannot argue what the First Nations or our Native Americans have used over the years to enter that altered state and come up with answers. What's it going to take for us to get there?
It is tough. I know in the academic world, there is not a lot of funding for parapsychology. That's why a lot of professors will mask their study. They'll, call it one thing, but they're really kind of looking for something else in the study. And then they kind of publish it into parapsychological peer-reviewed journals. But it's really interesting. I can see why mainstream hard scientists, your physics and your chemists and your biologists, don't like the paranormal, because it doesn't operate on the rules that we know.
Scientific theory.
It always happens when you least suspect it. You could be a ghost hunter with all the gear and just have to go use the washroom, and something will happen in the washroom, and you don't have any of your gear with you. It always happens when you least suspect it, and you can't repeat.
You can't repeat it. You can't repeat it, right?
You can't repeat it. We had a really interesting thing happen with the Spirit Box SB11, which I don't believe in. It's not a scientific instrument. All it does is scan radio stations. I gave it to two of my investigators. I said, go ahead, go upstairs and use it if you want. But, just know that I don't believe in it. After 70 minutes, they came downstairs. I asked them how it went, and they said, actually, it was really interesting. I said, okay. I was like, what happened? They said that there was a time where it started to say all their names, the homeowner and my 2 investigators' names. It didn't just say it once, it said it multiple times. They provided me with the clip. I listened to it over a 70-second time period. It said the homeowner's name once. It said Scott, my photographer's name, 4 times. It said medium, or Jody, my medium, name 3 times. And when they would ask it to repeat it, it would repeat their names. And so I'm not a math guy. I'm your social scientist kind of guy. So I had ChatGPT run a statistical analysis on it. And he said over 70 minutes, it would have the chance to say each of their names probably once. But it said over a 70-second period where it said their names so many times, especially when they asked it to repeat, would be 1 in billions, if not more. And I actually presented that to the 43rd online conference of the Society for Scientific Exploration because I thought it was so fascinating.
And see, those are just, how does that happen? We need to talk about a case that I'm working on where I actually got a name over the spirit box. And at the same time, my medium came up with it through earphones so nobody could hear it. And then
Love
we have a
that.
gravesite. We have a gravesite to go with it.
That's amazing.
So
See, stuff like
it has,
that is,
how do you explain it?
no, you can't. It's an anomaly. And when you try and repeat it, so we all went upstairs after they told me that, tried to repeat it, and not one thing came across the spirit box.
Yeah.
Had another anomalous EMF hit in the same house from a cast iron pot, which does not give off electromagnetic radiation. I lifted the lid off, the reading stopped, I put the lid back on. We tried everything to try and get it to replicate, couldn't. And I understand that hard scientists don't like that, but unfortunately, that's the way the paranormal works.
And maybe the time is coming for us to convince or work towards convincing the scientific community that maybe there's other ways to do this. Because saying you can't do it because doesn't necessarily cut it anymore. Which leads me into this next question right here for you. UFOs, ghosts, and cryptids, are they connected in your opinion?
You know what? Sometimes I think they could be. I was just we were talking about portals there the other day, and a lot of people in cryptozoology are
Mhm.
kind of leaning towards the fact that perhaps Bigfoot somehow is an
Dimensional.
interdimensional being because we
Yeah.
can't seem to find this guy, but there's thousands of people that have seen him. Same with UFOs. I've seen some UFO videos where it shoots up into the atmosphere, but then there are some UFO videos where it's just gone in a blink of a light. Is it going through some
Yeah.
sort of portal or teleportation? Because it's not shooting up in the atmosphere, it's just gone.
Well, the first time I had heard about it was an individual told me they had a house that was haunted, and then they later saw a UFO the size of a football field, I believe, passing over their house, and they were convinced that it was connected. And I initially thought, how bogus is that? Still do actually, but uh, I'm hearing more and more about there's a connection, dimensional connection. Are cryptids, are UFOs, are ghost dimensions? I mean, when you think about it, one theory is that the ghost that you see is just the temporary merging of 2 dimensions.
Yeah. No, yeah, no, for sure. I think it's a possibility, and it's obviously something that we're still working on. And I do like the fact that quantum physicists are starting to kind of do
Mhm.
paranormal studies because they're really on the fringe of science, looking at very extreme things. But
Yeah.
I can almost see in the future quantum physicists working hand in hand with academics that study parapsychology and other anomalous phenomena.
I agree, and I'm hoping that's the way we go, to try to come together with the scientific community to find out the answers. To say that nothing is going on is as bad or saying that it can't happen as bad as hearing one bump in the middle of the night and saying it's a ghost for sure. The answer's in the middle. Something is happening. But in our last couple of minutes together, Elliott, I'd like you to once again tell us how folks can find out about the symposium. I'd like to know about some of your books and where folks can find them. And go ahead, tell us a little bit about your books and the symposium and
Yeah, so I've written 3 books. My first one was Evil in Exeter. It was about a home investigation in Exeter, Rhode Island. Second book was called Supernatural Encounters: True Paranormal Accounts from Law Enforcement, where I collected over 50 stories from law enforcement that are all true. And then, of course, once that came out and I started doing podcasts and interviews, I had more law enforcement contact me with more stories. So that one's called More
Yeah.
Supernatural Encounters from Law Enforcement. And all 3 books are available on Amazon.com and Amazon.ca. Best way to get in touch with me and find out about my organization or the symposium is go to our website at ppri.net. Take a look through it. It's very, very cool website that my business partner Spencer Collier designed. You'll see under events, the Halifax Paranormal Symposium has its own link. We also have resources on there. I list out different academic studies, such as why we look at temperature changes, why we look at EMF readings in hauntings. There's a contact us form, and we even have our new UAP section. So anyone out there listening that has had a UFO sighting in Atlantic Canada or the New England area, and they have never reported it to an agency, we take those reports and we share it with other ufologists. So we do have a UFO reporting form for anyone that has not previously reported a UFO sighting.
Now, what made you guys decide to head in that direction also? Was it the
I
possibility of the
realized
connector?
I realized after going to the Shag Harbor UFO Expo about 2 years ago that we don't get many UFO cases anymore, and I wondered why. And then I went to our website and I saw that it was kind of heavily geared towards parapsychology, which is the scientific study of extrasensory perception or psychic abilities, mind-matter interaction or psychokinesis, and survival. And so I really changed our mission statement to say that we investigate all anomalous phenomena, and that UFOs are part of our culture. We actually had merged many years ago with the New England UFO Investigative Group. So we do UFO research. And when you ask people how many people have seen a UFO, they put their hand up. When you ask them how many people reported it, not many people.
Oh, yeah. And see, this is why our conversations, we've touched on so many little things and they can go so much deeper, so much farther. So we're going to have to do this again, my friend. I want to thank you again for joining us. And folks, Elliott Van Dusen, check out his website, check out his books. Definitely one of the stars of the paranormal field. So once
Well,
again,
thank you,
thanks for
Larry.
being with us. And we will have you back because we've got just so much more to talk about. And folks, we'll see you again on the next episode of Paranormal Stakeout. It's been a great night. Thanks for being with us, folks. Have a great night, and we'll see you on the other side. Have a good night, folks.